Most athletes think that they're doing zone 2 training, but they're actually training just a little bit too hard and they're not getting the benefits that they want. Welcome. Today I'm going to explain the science as simply as I can about zone 2 training, which is so often misunderstood or just overcomplicated in the exercise science community. This is a critical component for any endurance athlete. We've known this for a very long time. So many people talk about the heart and the lungs and the circulatory system and VO2 max and stroke volume and all of these complicated terms. But I'm going to go over something with you that 99% of people miss, some key concepts about zone 2 training on how it carries over to all intensities and then how it's not the same for everybody. We have the anaerobic energy system. This is your high intensity energy system. And then you also have your aerobic energy system. This is your low intensity energy system. Both energy systems are active at all times. It's not like we just turn one on and switch the other off once we start running faster. But at lower intensities, the majority of your energy systems, or of your energy, is coming from the aerobic system. And then as you start slowly picking up that pace, the high intensity anaerobic energy system just kicks on more and more and more. And then there's a crossover point where now the anaerobic energy system is creating more energy than the aerobic. And then at absolutely max effort, the anaerobic energy system is pretty much, contributing all of the energy because the aerobic energy system just cannot keep up as much. Now our body uses carbs and fats, sometimes protein, but we're not going to talk about that, to create energy. Carbs are what the anaerobic high intensity energy system loves to burn. This happens just in the outside of the mitochondria, just in the muscle cells. It happens a lot of other places too, but that carb just burns quickly. It creates a little bit of energy, and one of the byproducts is lactate. A lot of people know this as lactic acid, and if a lot of this accumulates in the muscle, you feel a burn. The muscle tries to get rid of it and it goes into the bloodstream, and once your blood lactate levels rise enough, your brain just starts telling you to just involuntarily slow down. Now, the aerobic energy system creates energy in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. Everybody knows that, but they have no idea what it actually means. You take a fat molecule and you take an oxygen molecule, and those go into that mitochondria, and it goes through a super long 12-step process called the Krebs cycle that I had to memorize in school, but I completely forgot pretty much after I took the test because it doesn't matter. And it creates a lot of energy. But this is a slow burning diesel fuel process that takes a little bit longer. But there's no lactic acid that gets created out of that. In fact, lactate can be recycled and vacuumed up into mitochondria and recycled into that energy, taking the place of that fat molecule to create all of that high amount of energy. So this means the mitochondria indirectly will help you with your high intensity anaerobic energy system because it'll prevent those muscles from accumulating too much lactic acid, so you can push harder without feeling that burn, of that lactate accumulating, or, you can push harder at higher intensities and it'll just not build up as fast in your blood because those mitochondria are just vacuuming up and recycling that lactate before it can create unnecessary fatigue. So the key question we have to ask ourselves is, well, how do we strengthen our mitochondria? Because these are very important for both low intensities and high intensities. Before we go any further, like the video. I put a lot of work into these and it really helps my algorithm. If you don't just hit that thumbs up button, I'm not going to be mad. I'm going to be disappointed. This is where low intensity training comes in. It's just being a game changer. Low intensity is so successful with just improving the size and number of your mitochondria. So larger mitochondria, maybe when you're a beginner, could only burn 0.5 gram of fat per minute. And when you're highly advanced, it could be 1.5 grams, even up to 2 grams of fat per minute. And then remember, when that lactate starts building up, that means it can also vacuum up more lactate into that mitochondria, the larger it is. So science has missed this because high intensity training is faster. It improves, all of your mitochondria and your endurance performance much more quickly in the short term. So they think that it's just superior. And a lot of very high level exercise physiologists have said some pretty ridiculous things about how high intensity is all you need and low intensity is kind of a waste of time. But the endurance community has known about this for like 100 years at least. Don't quote me on that though. A long time. So that's enough science. I hope I didn't lose you. Now we're going to get into a little bit more of a practical application on how you can think about it with your own training. And you need to understand 2 thresholds. Everybody's heard of the lactate threshold. This is, your kind of your 10K intensity. Beginners can hold their lactate threshold for like 30 minutes, advanced athletes up to an hour. But it's really the point on when you train above that lactate threshold. So maybe your lactate threshold is an 8-minute mile pace. If you're training just above that at a 7.5-minute mile pace, lactate is going to really start accumulating faster than your body can get rid of it. And you're going to be on a slippery slope at an intensity that you just cannot hold for very long. That's why often when you're above lactate threshold, we're doing shorter intervals. Your aerobic threshold is what we need to talk about because this is what you want to strengthen with your low intensity zone 2 training. Your aerobic threshold is that point where, you slowly ease into it and then you reach a certain point where the aerobic and the anaerobic energy systems kind of cross on a point, and now the anaerobic energy system is going to create more energy than the aerobic. This is where now you're replacing fat for energy with that lactate, or burning more carbs for energy. You want to train below that aerobic threshold. For a beginner that's never done low intensity training before, this could be a 12, 13-minute mile pace, practically walking. You're not even going to be able to run at that intensity. But it's critical that you train just below that line, or even pretty far below that line, even 10, 20% slower than your aerobic threshold. Now, I have a course that really dials in how to find what your aerobic threshold is because it changes over time. This is what everybody misses, especially with your heart rate and your pace. But when you just started out, maybe your aerobic threshold is well under that classic, 60 to 70% of your max heart rate zone 2. It's just kind of the standard that you'll see on your Garmin watches. Maybe your aerobic threshold is like 120 beats per minute and a 13-minute mile pace. You have to train extra low heart rates then. But as you train below that aerobic threshold, it's just going to increase it, and it's going to get stronger in both pace and heart rate for a while until you reach a certain point where the heart rate kind of plateaus. For most people, this is somewhere between 140, even in the 150 beats per minute I've seen with some athletes, but that's your aerobic threshold that you have to train below it. So what does this mean? For most people, 120 to 140 beats per minute is a pretty safe place. You should be nose breathing, conversational. You could speak 3 to 4 sentences before taking a quick breath. This is a pace that you can hold for hours. It's low intensity. It feels very just easy, almost too easy. If you're hydrating and refueling, you could hold it for 3 to 4 hours. And again, check out my course that you can just enter your email into my website if you really want to dial it in and find what your specific aerobic threshold is. I hope you enjoyed this video. Until next time, embrace the process.